Hello, Tanse, and welcome to APTN National News Weekend. I'm Daryl Stranger. This past week marked the long-awaited visit from Pope Francis, and on the first day of a week-long penitential pilgrimage, Pope Francis begged for forgiveness and offered an apology in the treatment of Indigenous children in residential schools. APTN's Tina House was in Edmonton and has this story.
The day began with a somber visit to the cemetery at the Musqueam First Nation by Pope Francis. While there, he says he had some time to reflect on what took place at the former residential school that once stood here, and offered a silent prayer for those that never made it home. Over at the Arbor, the official event began with a grand entry from chiefs, leaders, and residential school survivors. The procession also included a long red banner with the names of over 4,120 children who never came home from residential schools. Former Truth and Reconciliation Commissioner, Grand Chief Willie Littlechild, made the opening remarks.
During the recent visit to your home at the Vatican by a delegation of Indigenous survivors, elders, knowledge keepers, and youth, you also heard of the abuses so many of us have suffered at this and other residential schools. During our time with you, it was clear to us all that you listened deeply and with great compassion to the testimonies that told of the way our languages were suppressed, our culture taken from us.
For many here, the pain is still evident on their faces as the Pope addressed the crowd.
Estoy aquí en esta tierra que junto a una memoria antigua.
Today, I am here in this land that, along with its ancient memories, preserves the scars of still open wounds. I am here because the first step of my penitential pilgrimage among you is that of again asking forgiveness, of telling you once more that I am deeply sorry. Sorry for the ways in which, regrettably, many Christians supported the colonizing mentality of the powers that oppressed the Indigenous peoples.
Ron Beardy from the Garden Hill First Nations in Manitoba was very emotional after hearing him speak.
As a residential school survivor myself, and I've carried that for a long time, and it's very hard. I got emotional, especially when I thought about the little ones that never made it home, that had their unmarked graves. Those little babies and little boys that did not return to their mummies and daddies.
But for National Chief of the AFN, Roseanne Archibald, she says more work needs to be done.
He didn't address the doctrine of discovery. We've been asking for the revoking of the doctrine of discovery since the beginning of this journey, and he didn't address it at all.
But for Eileen Clearsky, she says that the horrific legacy of residential school has affected generations of her family, and this visit by the Pope is a new beginning in her healing.
The legacy of residential school has had a huge impact on our families, and we're suffering, and we need to heal through that process now with the Pope acknowledging. And now I was so happy that he actually apologized and is looking forward to the future for all First Nations people and children.
Tina House, APTN National News, Musqueam First Nation.
The Pope then moved on to Quebec for the second stop on his tour. Survivors are asking, is the Pope's apology helping or reopening old wounds? Here's Lindsay Richardson with more.
The masses gathering in Quebec wanted a second apology from the Pope, and within hours of his arrival, they got it.
I express my deep shame and sorrow, and together with the bishops of this country, I renew my request for forgiveness for the wrong done by so many Christians to the indigenous peoples. I beg forgiveness.
But even before the Pope stepped up to speak, residential school survivors questioned his sincerity based on the wording of the first apology, where he said he was sorry about how many Christians supported a colonizing mentality.
Sincèrement, que le pape allait s'excuser au nom de l'Église catholique, et c'est pas ce que j'ai entendu en allant blâmer les chrétiens, puis même, je sais pas c'est qui les chrétiens, c'est-tu moi, c'est-tu vous. Non, je suis très déçu comme ex-pensionnaire qui a fréquenté le pensionnat de Maliotenam. Non, je suis encore blessé.
Prior to the visit, the AFNQL stressed the need for a redo of the apology. Regional Chief Ghislain Picard had his own ideas of how it would go.
My, I guess, wildest thought, I was hoping for the Pope to just stay away from the protocol and toss his, written speech and speak from the heart. And I think that would probably speak volume.
Inside Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré, residential school survivors came together for the Pope's Holy Mass. One of them, Marilyn Simon Ingram, was disappointed in the proceedings.
It wasn't the way we pictured it. You know, the Pope is here, yes. I think the federal governments are here, yes. Provincial governments are here, yes. But the survivors are pushed away in certain areas, and it's no longer about the survivors anymore. It's not about the residential school, and the damages they done to us and our children. It's about them. Was it worth the fight for today? I mean, look around you right now. The majority of the survivors are the other side of the fence, are outside here, but they aren't inside the church.
The apology is supposed to be a first step, and those gathered here have ideas for the next. Serene Fox certainly does. It says so on this banner she helped hold up.
We need to talk about the doctrine of discovery and how it essentially makes Indigenous people not human, soulless, and therefore have no rights to our land, our ceremony, and our culture. And we know that's not true. So more than an apology, we need action, and part of that action is truth.
The discussions are not over. Leaders will meet with bishops for a formal dinner tonight, and with it comes a list of formal requests.
We're looking for information. First and foremost, we're looking for those school records. We're looking for access to information. We're looking to work closely with the local diocese. What I'm seeing in the messaging from the Pope is he's really setting the tone on how he expects the Conference of Canadian Catholic Bishops to work with Indigenous groups here in Canada.
A delegation of First Nations leaders from Eastern Canada will provide an update on their meeting and requests before Pope Francis departs for Iqaluit on Friday. Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Quebec City.
As the Pope apologized on Canadian soil, it is the previous Vatican audience in the spring that some Inuit survivors were remembering. They asked the Catholic Church to intervene in the case of Joannes Rivoire, an Oblate priest living in France and evading Canadian justice. Kathleen Martins and Brittany Guillot have a North American exclusive sit-down with Rivoire from Lyon, France. Please be aware some of this content may be triggering for some viewers.
A long-awaited apology was delivered by Pope Francis earlier this year for the Catholic Church's role in the residential school system.
For the deplorable conduct of these members of the Catholic Church,
e vorrei dirvi di tutto cuore, sono molto addolorato.
I ask for God's forgiveness, and I want to say to you with all my heart, I am very sorry.
At that meeting, Inuit delegates asked the Pope to intervene in the case of Joannes Rivoire, an Oblate priest accused of sexually assaulting children in Nunavut. He has never spoken to North American media, but agreed to sit down with APTN National News. When we arrived to his retirement home in Lyon, France, the now retired priest refused to go on camera, but allowed us to record him.
Un jour, mon curé m'a posé la question, ça ne t'intéresserait pas de devenir prêtre? Il était chez les Oblats, et il était dans le Grand Nord. Alors il racontait là-bas. C'est ce qui m'a intéressé. Et pour aller là-bas, il fallait que je rentre chez les Oblats.
He says he spent time in Ontario learning English before arriving in Chesterfield Inlet in 1960.
L'esquimau, pour un Français, c'est très facile à prononcer. Alors j'ai appris à dire la messe. Je ne comprenais rien de ce que je disais, mais eux comprenaient tout. Il y avait 2 maisons, le poste de fourrure et la mission. C'est un lieu de passage des gens. Alors quand ils venaient vendre la fourrure, ils venaient visiter la mission. On buvait une tasse de café ensemble. Ils faisaient leur petite prière à la chapelle.
Rivoire says life in the far north was easygoing, but in 1993 he suddenly packed his bags and returned to France. After 3 minors say he sexually abused them in the late 1960s. After 2 decades, the charges were stayed due to a lack of reasonable prospect of conviction, and Rivoire claims he doesn't know much about the allegations.
Est-ce que vous avez des faits précis? Moi, j'ai 2 faits précis qu'on m'a donnés. Il y a celui-là qui s'est suicidé, il y a une autre maman qui est, je ne sais pas quel âge elle a. Elle racontait à ses copines, quand à 6 ans, que je me masturbais devant elle et je la caressais. Et puis je vais avoir une 3e main avec la photo du diable. En lui disant, si tu en parles, il va venir t'emmener en enfer. C'est ce que j'ai entendu.
Rivoire denies all of the allegations against him.
J'ai passé 30 ans, plus de 30 ans là-bas, à aider les gens comme je pouvais. Puis on ne parle rien d'autre que je fais là-bas, sauf ça. J'ai touché des pénis, mais c'était en tant qu'infirmier, infirmier bénévole. J'étais le seul. Au début, là, avant qu'il y ait la Dulan, la ligne il n'y avait rien. Alors le gouvernement nous donnait chaque année une petite valise d'affaires très simples. De l'aspirine, un peu d'affaires pour faire des bandages. Il y avait Et quand quelqu'un avait un problème, ben, il venait nous voir comme infirmier. Alors il avait mal à leur pénis ou tout ça, ben, il venait me voir. J'ai même regardé des filles aussi. Il y avait une épidémie de syphilis là-haut à ce moment-là. Ben, alors, puis je communiquais avec un docteur qui était à 100 km au sud.
He says he did not abuse children while up north.
Si les gens ne veulent pas me croire, il n'y peut rien. Moi, je n'ai pas conscience d'avoir fait quelque chose de grave là-bas.
Brittany Guillot, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Calls to the National Residential School Crisis Line have spiked since the Pope arrived in Canada. A helpline supervisor says calls are at levels not seen since the discovery of suspected unmarked graves in Kamloops last year. If you need help, the National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available. That number is 1-866-925-4419. All right, we need to step aside for a short break. When we return, part 2 of the interview with Rivoire. Welcome back. Joannes Rivoire has been called the devil priest by Inuit who survived sexual abuse while at residential schools. In part 2 of our interview with him, he says he has no plans to return to Canada to face a sexual assault charge related to historical abuse. Brittany Guillot and Kathleen Martins bring us the story, and a warning, the story may be upsetting and triggering for some viewers.
According to Rivoire, he was never contacted by the RCMP, saying he became aware of the allegations when they hit the media. His order, the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, have asked him to return to Canada to face the allegations. But it's clear he has no intention of doing that.
On m'a dit qu'au Canada, chez les Indiens, il y avait depuis quelques années des firmes qui s'étaient spécialisées pour faire des procès contre des Blancs pour des abus sexuels. Alors ça leur donnait de l'argent et des fois ça rapportait de l'argent à ceux qui accusaient. Et là, il y a plusieurs années, il y avait une très grosse affaire là-bas de ce côté-là, chez les Indiens. Et je pense que les Esquimaux, après, on dit on pourrait faire pareil. J'ai entendu dire aussi que chez les Esquimaux, c'est assez courant, quand ils ont un gros problème, de dire c'est à cause de... Vous connaissez les évangiles? Ça met les points sur les i, je pense.
He hands over a passage from the Bible, the woman caught in adultery. It says only those without sin can pass judgment onto others. He insisted several times throughout the interview that we read it.
Ah oui, parce que ça me sert beaucoup, les gens qui me critiquent, tout ça. Je dis, mais, on est humain comme tout le monde, hein. Donc on peut se laisser aller des fois, vous savez. C'est pas parce qu'on est prêtre qu'on n'a pas des...
Des êtres humains?
Eh oui. On met toujours les prêtres à part. Parce qu'ils prêchent Dieu, prêchent... Finalement, on est des humains comme tout le monde, hein.
According to an arrest warrant issued in February 2021, there is a new charge for Rivoire to face. And a Canada-wide warrant was issued for his arrest, again. Nunavut RCMP confirmed they applied for a red notice through Interpol. It's used to request law enforcement worldwide to locate and arrest fugitives. And Rivoire says he handed over his passport to the Oblates.
Tout ce qui nous appartient, même l'argent, on n'a plus rien ici. C'est tout pris à notre maison provinciale par les Oblats. C'est eux qui gèrent ça. Ils m'ont dit, tu es Canadien, donne-moi ton passeport canadien, on va regarder s'il est à jour ou pas. Je l'ai donné il y a quelques jours à notre responsable, là. Il fallait qu'il le fasse renouveler.
Father Vincent Gruber with the Oblates confirmed Rivoire has French and Canadian citizenship. But he says he doesn't know anything about the Oblates renewing his passport. And for Rivoire, he says he has no plans to return to Canada.
C'est tellement vieux, c'est un problème qui reste pas dans ma vie. Moi, je me prépare à passer de l'autre côté.
Brittany Guillot, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time for one final break. Stay with us. More on Rivoire when we come back. Welcome back. Canada may have missed the chance to have Father Joannes Rivoire tried for sexual assault. The so-called devil priest currently lives in Lyon, France, and as a French lawyer explains, the statute of limitations has expired in that country. Brittany Guillot has more.
In Canada, there is no statute of limitations for sex crimes. But what happens when an alleged abuser leaves the country before standing trial? Former Oblate priest Joannes Rivoire is accused of sexually abusing 6 Inuit children before leaving Nunavut for France. And he is now the subject of a Canada-wide arrest warrant. French lawyer Nadia Debache says the process of extradition back to Canada is complicated. She says French authorities could hold a trial in France for charges laid abroad. That's because France won't extradite their citizens.
Aujourd'hui, la situation est que pour les crimes sexuels concernant les enfants, le délai de prescription est de 30 ans à compter de la majorité. Et pour les délits, il est de 20 ans à compter de la majorité.
Debache says the process has been further complicated by the statute of limitations. In France, a felony is for serious crimes such as rape, and inappropriate touching would warrant a misdemeanor charge.
S'il y a par exemple 2 victimes, la première victime se manifeste, dépose plainte, et 10 ans après, il y a une deuxième victime qui se manifeste, et bien le délai de prescription commence à courir non pas pour la première victime, non pas au moment où elle a déposé plainte, mais à partir de la deuxième plainte, de la deuxième victime.
That means the statute of limitations would expire at the age of 48 for crimes such as rape. Rivoire's most recent accuser is now 51 years old. Debache says French law has changed to allow more time for victims to come forward.
Je pense parce qu'ils se sont rendus compte qu'effectivement, pour les victimes d'abus sexuels, c'était extrêmement difficile de pouvoir parler. Parce que souvent, ces abus sexuels sont commis au sein de la famille, au sein d'institutions. Et c'est extrêmement compliqué pour des enfants de pouvoir dire ce qu'ils ont vécu. Les victimes expliquent de plus en plus les mécanismes qui ont fait qu'elles n'ont pas pu parler, qu'elles ont été bloquées dans le silence. Et du coup, ça permet de mieux comprendre les choses et de aussi aller dans le sens de permettre aux victimes de pouvoir prendre le temps de devoir sanctionner les auteurs de ces faits.
Brittany Guillot, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Rivoire denies all the allegations against him. Now, Justice Canada has confirmed with APTN News that an extradition request was made to France with respect to Rivoire. The request was made by the Public Prosecution Service of Canada through Department of Justice officials. They say that in order to respect the integrity of the process, they will not be commenting any further. That's all we have for you on APTN National News Weekend. For news anytime, check out our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thank you for joining us. Miigwech, and have a great night.